Hi, I'm Ben. Welcome to my book corner. It's a Tuesday, so we have a tag video for you today. This was originally created by Hilary B. Green over at Book Bustle, and I was tagged in this by the amazing Aaron Hook. I will link their channels in the description down below, and Aaron's video will be at the top there for you. Go give it a check out. This is the reader profile tag. There's 10 prompts for this one, plus a tag people prompt. If you're reading this, consider yourself tagged if you've not already done it, or you just fancy doing it again. So, question number 1. What for you makes a good book? And for me, this is actually quite a complicated question, because I prioritize different things depending on the genre that I'm reading, and I'm not breaking it down by a genre in general. So I'll tell you what makes for me the opposite, what will take me out of a book, and that is inconsistent character writing. Nothing irritates me more than a character being written in a certain way and then for plot reasons making an out of character decision. So character consistency is one. Relevant world building to the story and the character as well is another one. And a coherent story. I hate twists for no reason. Everything needs to make sense within the world, and if it's something that breaks the rules of that world, there needs to be a good reason for it, and it needs to be a big impactful moment. I tend to be more of a character person, so I either need a great deal of character growth or a great deal of personality to come through, but it does vary a little bit. I'll prioritize world building higher up on things like fantasy and sci-fi, and story more in terms of a thriller or a contemporary piece. So there we go. Number 2, what are you currently reading? And I am currently just started The Bee King by Matilda Zeller. This is one of my indie books that I got in one of my book boxes. Enjoying it quite a bit so far, only about 25 pages in, so probably continuing that on a sprint very shortly. Number 3, what's the last book you didn't finish and why? This is The Clown Hunt by Judith Sonnet, which is a extreme horror splatterpunk novel. Not my favourite type of horror, I have said it before on the channel. I will say that this is a good example of splatterpunk and extreme horror. There was one specific death scene in there, and it's known as the wishbone scene, which was a step beyond the sensibilities for me personally. It was too much for me to stomach, and that made me put the book down. And the genre is there to shock, and it was shocking beyond what I wanted to read. So I put it down at that point. Now, before that, it did still push the boundaries. You know, cheese grating living children's legs off is a little bit gruesome. But that scene in particular made me just put the book down. On saying that, if you are a fan of splatterpunk and extreme horror, you will probably enjoy that book quite a bit. So, there we go. Number 4, what obscure book do you wish other people would read? So, I'm reading a load of indie books at the moment, but one I want to shout out is one that I read last year that came out in 2020 called One for the Road by Jeremy M. Moore. Again, my review is up there for this one. It's only 217 pages long. It's available on Kindle. I think it might be on Kindle Unlimited as well. And this is a tale where the main character wakes up dazed and confused just outside a bar and walks in. And this bar is basically the halfway house for spirits between them dying and moving on to whatever their afterlife is. And it turns out that they can interact with other patrons at the bar, which is unusual. Normally, only workers at this sort of halfway house can do so. It's got a great deal of humour. It's a fascinating sort of blending of various different mythologies. I do like stuff in general that pulls from Latin American origin as well. I like the flavour that this goes for. I highly recommend checking it out. That's One for the Road by Jeremy M. Moore. Number 5. What's the longest book you've ever read? So this is a bit of a cheat, but it is the complete 4-book series of the Heritage of Shannara, which is a bit of a chonker. Comparing it to a normal book, it's a bit bigger, and a lot wider. I've had this book for quite a long time. It's 12, just over 1,200 pages. 1,237 pages long. But that is 4 books. Hello. That is 4 books put into one. If it's going to be a single title book, it'll be probably one of the Wheel of Times. I can't remember the page count on them, but it will probably be one of those. Or if not that, possibly Geomancer by Ian Irvin as well, which the version I've got is about 650 pages. But again, it's quite a tall and wide book compared to most paperbacks. So in a normal size, I suspect its page count is a little bit longer. So number 6, if you could have a dinner party with 5 fictional characters, who would they be? Now, we all know that I am a bit of a chaos gremlin. So my choices kind of reflect that a little bit. So first off, I would have to have a character from the Discworld here. I'm limiting this to 1 character per book series as well. So otherwise it would all be Discworld characters. And this is actually quite a hard one to start off with, but probably Granny Weatherwax, who is the head of her coven of witches over at Lancre. Quite old-fashioned, quite traditional in the sense of doesn't get a lot of the more modern things that are going on. There's a scene in, I think it's Weird Sisters, where the travelling troupe comes to town, and she couldn't get her head around the fact that this was fact and fake, and it was just brilliant. But she's quite cranky, she's quite crotchety, but she really does have a heart of gold underneath. She really does care for people, and she has a sense of fairness and believes in respect. And that sort of plays into my next character, which would be Nynaeve Alvear from Wheel of Time. By far and away, she is my favourite character in that series. She has a great deal of personal power in her ability to use. I can't remember the name of the magic. The one power, I think it is. I get confused. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've read them. But her ability to sort of interact magically with the world is almost unparalleled for people of this age of the world. But she's incredibly protective of the people around her. She's got, again, a strong sense of justice. She's quite anti-authoritarian in a way as well. And it'd be fascinating seeing her and Weatherwax together. Now, obviously, you have these powerful characters so far. So what you need is someone to try and balance that out with the homely feel. And for me, this would be Samwise Gamgee. From Lord of the Rings. Just an incredibly affable, likeable character who would try and smooth over the arguments, try and get everyone around the table and talking, and would also be an amazing host as well for this party. You know, you wouldn't go badly fed, and would probably make sure that not everybody killed each other. But if anybody needs killing, then we have Fitz from the Farseer series of books. Specifically, the version of Fitz coming up to Fool's Assassin, which is the last trilogy that he's the main character of, where he's battle-weathered, he's battle-hardened, but he's settled down, he's kind of removed from court intrigue as much as he can be. And overall, his killing days are behind him, but you've got this former assassin who's quite wily in the way of the world, not afraid to offer his opinions either, but will play the diplomatic side as well. And just in general, of all the characters I've read throughout fantasy, is one of the most interesting ones that I've come across. So I'd love to be at a table with them. And finally, because we need to add a little bit of chaos, Peter Pan. More specifically, the version I recently read in Lost Boy by Christina Henry, but any version of Peter Pan would work here for the level of potential chaos and mischief that they would introduce. And I think you would have a literally riotous tea party with all those people present. So there we go. Number 7, 5 books you'd want if you're stranded on a desert island. Okay, so we're going to start by being practical and then fall off that cliff very quickly. And this is the one that everyone picks. Not read it, but it sounds like a sensible pick. The SAS Ultimate Survival Guide by John Wiseman. Because if I went without some form of survival guide, I would be dead in a week. So there we go. But moving on from that, you have So first of all, I need a chonker to read, and I want to reread something that I probably won't get back to. So I'd go for the Sword of Shannara Complete Edition, which, much like the one Heritage of Shannara, is all the books in an omnibus edition. It is somewhere over there behind me. It's not quite as long, but it's a chonker as well. I probably will never get to reread it because it's so big, but I would like to. So that's my chonker of a book to work through. The next one is a book that is possibly my favourite all time and is The Reaper Man by Terry Pratchett. This is the book that really got me into reading. I'd read books previously, I'd read Hogfather before it, but this kind of still stands out in many ways as my favourite Pratchett book for its observations on what it means to be human in particular, and I love death as a character, so Reaper Man goes in there, although you could substitute that with guards, The Truth, I think it's called, or Weird Sisters. Any of those would fit in there as well. Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. This is a book I read last year. It's a horror novel. Review is up there for that one. It's the longest review I've done on the channel. This is the book that makes me so angry, and I think it would be important to keep that sort of emotion going in some ways, because anger is such a driving and inspiring force, and if you're trapped on a desert island, you need a few things to drive you forward, hope being one. You're probably not going to get that from books, but you need something else, and the idea of being angry at the world and sort of surviving through spite is one that I quite like. And that book, very quickly, I reread the first chapter recently because I was considering doing a third chapter read of it, and it very quickly got my hackles up again in exactly the same way. So there's that one. And for a bit of levity, I would bounce back to some Tom Sharp as my fifth choice. Probably Porterhouse Blue, which is a satirical skewering of the higher education UK system, specifically university. Because that book has me cackling every time I read it. But there's a number of other books that you could pull out from his series as well that I really enjoy. Riotous Assembly being another one. But probably Porterhouse Blue, that's the one that sticks in my mind the most. So, number 8, one book you could not put down. I'm going to pick one from this year. And it was a book that really surprised me, and that was Broken Hearts and Zombie Parts by William Hussey. Funny book, full of heart, great deal of UK humour in here, good character work, limited world building that does what it needs to do. It's a very economical book. I absolutely adore this. Definitely going to be one I'm going to reread at some point in the future. And it's also just a fun book, you know? And I read that, I think it was in 2 sittings, because it's about 400 pages. I needed to go to sleep at some point, but absolutely loved it. I read most of it in the second sitting. So, number 9, 5 books or authors you will never read. I've gone for authors with this one. And generally speaking, there's not many that I won't read. Some of these I have read, and that's why I won't read them again. So we're going to start with the first one being Yenneker Snow. Yenneker Snow is an erotica novelist. They wrote a group of books that I've read called, I think it's a Beautiful Monsters trilogy, something like that, which is basically erotic retellings of fairy tales, specifically the three, not Hansel and Gretel. Goldilocks and the Three Bears is the third one. Little Red Riding Hood is the second, and the first one is Beauty and the Beast. They are terrible. The second one in particular, I have some major issues with, because I think it's quite problematic in a lot of ways in terms of the way it depicts certain relationship aspects as being aspirational. I don't like that at all. But just in general, I just hated them. Hated them. It's Noah's fault I read them. Go shout at him. I read 2 of them. The first one was so bad that I was curious about the second one. The second one made me feel very, very uncomfortable. And then Noah did a live reading of the third one and gave up partway through. Never going to touch their books again. They mainly do mafia romance, I think. The next one is partially for political reasons. and partially for not my genre of books, but Nadine Dorries. Um, she wrote a load of books which I think fall under what's classed as women's literature, um, which generally speaking is not my genre of for go-to in general, but also Nadine Dorries is a former Conservative politician. She is a raving idiot. From at least when she does interviews, she comes across as one anyway. Her political views are just, in many ways, just so opposite of mine. And she was a massive defender of corrupt government officials. So, yeah, never going to read one of her books. Not a great surprise to anyone who knows my political leanings, probably. Third one is Colleen Hoover. I've heard plenty of stuff about Colleen Hoover books. They don't sound like my genre of book. They don't sound like a book that I would enjoy reading. I also believe some of the things that are shown in there are a bit problematic as well. I also hate the covers of every book that I've seen, which straight away for me as a cover buyer is a problem. Fourth is Paulo Coelho. I read The Alchemist. I hated it. One of the worst books I've ever read, if I'm completely honest, in my opinion. Lots of people love it. I found it just so hateable on so many levels. It just felt like a load of inspirational wall hangings in a homeware store in a book form. Hated it. I have no interest in reading anything else by them after that. I know someone I spoke to recently actually said that once you've read one book, you've read them all. I'll believe that. Not touching them. And we're going to finish on something controversial. William Shakespeare. I have no interest in reading Shakespeare whatsoever. I did Macbeth in school. Didn't particularly like it. I struggle with classic literature anyway. Reading Shakespeare to me feels like the equivalent of nails on a chalkboard. I have no issues reading reimaginings of Shakespeare's work or reinterpretations, and I don't mind Shakespeare's work cropping up in other books. But I will never go back and read Shakespeare. I can't think of anything worse for me personally. Number 10, if you were to write a book, what would it be about? I don't know. I like fantasy, and I like world building, so it'd probably be something fantasy related, possibly a fantasy dystopia, because I do quite like the meshing of those two. And in my D&D game, there is an element of that going on in the world that I've designed. But past that, I do like antagonists rather than protagonists, so it'd probably be quite a morally grey character, maybe even the villain of the piece from their point of view. But what the story would look like, I don't know, because I'm not a fan of redemption arcs. So there we go. A bit vague, not something I've really thought about, but that's probably what it'd be. But that is my reader profile tag. If you're going to do this tag, please tag me in it. I would love to see your videos. I hope you've enjoyed this as well. Let me know if you have in the comments down below, or even if you haven't, because interaction's always good. So, but thanks for watching, and I will hope to catch you all very soon.